Hi guys, it's Rob here, and first of all, I'm recording the video to all the guys who downloaded my ebook and asked me questions, because giving the charts pre-flop supposedly helped lots of you, but still lots of you have lots of questions like, okay, Rob, okay, great, thanks for the charts, but what should I do here, or what should I do there? The biggest amount of questions that I received were about the small blind, because the strategy that I gave on the small blind is not perfect, it's not optimal, and I think this is one of the weakest points in my prep charts, because I don't believe you should play according to theories. Okay, it should be a starting point, but then you need to get to know some theories and play on your head and understand what you're doing. So in this video, this is like a small gift, because I want to show you what can you do, okay, and how am I thinking about those situations. And this is also the answer why those stuff are not in my ebook. Okay, first I would like to some bragging. I would like to show you one of my graphs. This is two-year-old graph, because back then I was playing on PokerStars on NL 500 and 1K zooms. I didn't touch NL 200 zoom even once, I guess. So I was strongly attacking like every single weakness that I was able to grab in my opponent's stats. I was grabbing it. So as you see, my blue line goes down. It means I was over aggressive. The blue line should go flat, having my style. Okay, so having a blue negative means I was too aggressive, or I was playing on a very high stakes when people are folding and recognizing that they need to fold and they don't call me down like that. Or they call me down in the right situations and then avoid very tough situations when I'm trying to push them away. And here is the graph from the stakes before I started to play on PokerStars. And this is the red line here is the 100% accurate indicator. It will tell you when it's time to go up. So if any of you have 3 lines like this, it means you're in the kindergarten right now for you. It means you should go up, because you're totally dominating and crushing your opponents. Okay, it is the graph from NL 400 and 600 mainly. So it was too low. So that's why I, after having that kind of graphs, I decided to go up. Okay, let's come back to the small blind, because this is the strategy that I have shown you. And I was thinking about it, and it was really tough for me to give you like the very good and accurate small blind instruction what to do. Okay, and this is not my goal to give you like from A to Z theory, tons of theory answer. Okay, you should do this or that. I want to just give some lights on some aspects for you to know what to do further by your own. Okay, so here on the left, this is the print screen of my strategy, and well, let's start to answer to the question first. I'm going to show you some hands too, when to open limp. So you should create a limping strategy only in some situations, and the very main reason is when the big blind is forcing you to limp or to fold. Okay, limping is the answer, like not to fold. Okay, because there are some guys who like you open 3 blinds and he's 3-betting 20% of the time, or he's calling you down and he's fighting and he's like on the boxing ring and come on, show me what you've got, right? So then when you won't be able to open 40% of your hands profitably, then it means you should limp more or to create a limping strategy. Okay, sometimes you can even limp 100% of your range. This is not optimal, but versus more aggressive players, you can limp 60%. or something like that. And this is like the whole strategy that I can show you in next videos if you want, if some of you want, or a coaching, personal coaching. But right now I want you to know that this is not necessary to do unless someone will push you to do this. Okay? Second, it's very good to limp because on average, because you can get great pot odds. So sometimes you can see a hand like 5-3 offsuit and you say, okay, I'm folding. But first of all, you get great pot odds. So let's say you decide to limp. But versus a very aggressive player, it will be a wrong move because he's going to isolate you very wide. So that's why you can limp like almost any two-hand versus a player who is not attentive, or versus a player who is not isolating you a lot. Like he's isolating like 30% or something like that, or 20%. It means you can just punish him for being not aggressive enough by limping. And this is the way that you're going to earn much more money and improve your red line at the same time. And please remember, people don't know this, but you shouldn't limp on micro. Of course, unless this is a very complex exploitive move that I'm going to show you in like 5 minutes. Okay? So in general, versus a very aggressive players, when you're forced to create a limping strategy, okay, you can do this, but you shouldn't do this on stakes below NL100. Okay, so please focus your mind on the starting from NL100 plus. Okay, if you think that this is a fancy move and it's going to give you some advantage, yeah, sure, but the rate that you are going to pay is too much, and I think it's a very wrong idea to get to know every single concept which is new for you and so on when you're playing on micro or small stakes. It doesn't work. It's like, well, maybe it works, but not as effective as you expect. I can show you what to do and how to, go through the micro and small stakes, but the solution is totally different than you think. Okay. Playing well on the small blind depends on understanding what your opponent will let you to do. Okay? And what I mean, you will realize in a few minutes. Okay, let me tell you some basic details, theory details, about the small blind limping. So, I limp on a small blind, big blind raises. What to do? Well, this is not so simple, of course, and that's why I didn't give you the correct and straight answer in my ebook. So you need to know that limp fold of 30% is a low stat. Limp fold of 40% is an average stat, and limp fold 50% is a high stat. So when some of your opponents are limp folding 30%, it means that supposedly they're limping too little, and limp fold of 30% can mean lots of stuff, like that your opponent is calling too wide, or he's limping too tight, or he's trying to exploit you in some way. But limp fold of 30% means the guy in general will be fighting. Limp fold of 30% is an average, and limp fold of 50% is very high, actually. There are some guys who are limp folding 60%, but it may be their like a basic strategy, or sometimes this is an exploitive move. But in general, limp fold of 50% is a lot, so I don't recommend you to play like this. And you can use this information versus your opponent and isolate them a lot. So the other stuff: fold versus small blind steal. Well, in general, when your opponent is folding 50% of the time versus your steal, you should steal. You shouldn't limp a lot. When your opponent is folding around 40%, well, it depends how he's playing post flop. Is he aggressive, or is he a strong player or not? Is he three-betting a lot? But in general, average is 40. But when someone is folding 30, he's like a fighter. You should create a limping strategy versus a guy who is a strong player doesn't have many leaks, and he's folding only 30%. Okay, so here, this is a print screen of my Flopzilla, and we have 260 hands on average in this strategy that I suggested. And before we go further, you need to recognize who is your opponent, okay? Because as I told you, I needed to give you some information about the small blind, because in the first version, I didn't give this info at all. But this is the strategy that you can use as a basic stuff. This is, of course, not perfect, and you can change it, but I seriously wanted to give you some basics. So, before you decide what to do, you need to recognize, is big blind isolating linear range or polarized range? Linear range would be something like 9s plus and I don't know, ace jack suited plus and ace 10s offsuit plus or something like that. But in general, the strongest hands. This is linear, from the strongest to the weaker hands. But in general, the most strong hands from the pre-flop chart. Polarized range is like the very strong and some shitty hands that they are going to fold. A limping strategy will be applied differently versus those two different isolating strategies. Okay, when someone is isolating linear, it means he has a strongest hands, and when he call, just you limp and he just, okay, I check and let's see the flop, it means that he is capped post flop. So it's much easier to outplay him post flop. When someone uses polarized strategy, it means his calling ranges are a little bit stronger, but his isolating ranges will have some weakness. That it means you should like limp raise a lot, because you're going to force him to fold, or you can just limp call medium range of hands that you're going to save some money versus the stronger part of his ranges, and you're going to win more money versus weaker part of his range. So the strategies are totally different, but this is a totally different story right now. So the other thing is your opponent isolating often? Isolating often means, I don't know, like 40 or 50%, okay? 50 is huge, but like 40, 45 is a lot. 35 can be like a total basic stuff. And if he's isolating 35%, you can limp raise and limp call some percent of ranges. I'm going to show you in the next slide. And the other thing is, with that, which I'm repeating a lot of times, is he aggressive post flop? Because if your opponent is like isolating and then he doesn't know what to do because the ranges are too wide, this is a perfect victim for us, because he's going to like say, okay, I raise, okay, you call, and then you can reverse float him on the flop, like, okay, check call. And then you can see in the stats that they don't know what to do. I'm going to show you on some hands on very high stakes what kind of leaks good regulars have, okay? Please remember, initiative is less important when ranges are wide. So you shouldn't be afraid of limp calling or like giving away the initiative to your opponent when he's on a big blind, because the ranges are very wide and hand reading skills and preparation works and have much more significance than in other situations. And also, when we limp, we can limp aces, kings, queens, and so on. And when our opponent checks pre-flop, immediately we have an advantage in mid-pot, because our range is stronger on average than his, and he is cupped. So we can triple barrel bluff him a lot. Okay, the correct way to play is to be one step ahead, at least. Okay, so you limp, big blind raises, and you re-raise to 10 blinds. So what will he ship? What will he call? Well, the thing is, you need to know these answers. You don't need to know the answers of every single opponent. But what I recommend you to do is to just review this situation. Okay? Take 5 or 10 top winning regs or most often playing regs on your opponent, on your stakes, and just see, okay, what they are shipping in this situation, and just create a counter strategy. This is a very simple stuff. It's going to take you less than 30 minutes, and you're going to earn on this action tons of money. Okay, and you need to check what kind of ranges are being called versus a limp race on average. Why? Because it will be a starting point for you to think about those ranges. Because when you have this information already, it's much easier to create strategy for you and to counter strategy those guys and to outplay them and to understand what they do know and what they don't know. So here we have around 260 combos, so this is around 20% of hands. As I said, 35% is a basic ice range, and 10% here in the brackets is what kind of range he needs to defend versus our limp race. And the next strategy is 40 and 13%, 45 and 15%. So every single time, it's very easy to count that if your opponent needs to defend 10% of his range, of his ice range, you should always cut it in half and assume that 5% of this range he's going to ship and 5% he's going to call, on average. So starting from this point, you can create their shipping ranges and calling ranges for every single type of this guy. If you make some preparation earlier, like off the tables, during a live session or during an online session, you're going to recognize it very quickly that your opponent is doing something wrong. Without this preparation, you're going to miss this information. So when we limp around 20%, which is pretty small, because this is like the average of average, because the big lie of statistics is when you take a dog and go for a walk, on average you have 3 legs, right? So these ranges, which are here, this is the type of average like this. I just gave you an example because you can have totally different ranges here, but you need to know that when you limp, you can limp fold around 40% of the time. Of course, it depends on the sizing of isolation. Okay, because when someone is isolating to 2 blinds, you should like limp call or let's say limp continue 100% of your range. The totally different story is when your opponent is isolating to 5 or 6 blinds, which sometimes happens. It means that you need to fold more. That's obvious. What else? Limp raise around 15% of the time, and out of this 20%. And when you limp raise and your opponent is shipping like 5% of his range, well, your range is around 3% actually. So this is a very tight. So jacks plus, you're not folding anything offsuit. You're not folding when you're re-raising it. And some other part of limp raise would be hand that is not very good to make a call out of position, but plays very well post flop when called. So a very bad hand to have in your 4-betting range, in my opinion, would be a queen 7 suited or king 7 suited. Because every king in our opponent range will kill our hand like this, and we will find ourselves in a very difficult situation very often. So I want to have a clear situation and to have like 6-3 suited or 5-3 suited or 3-4 suited or something like that, or 7-4 suited in my 4-betting range, sorry, like limp raising range actually. Because this is a very simple situation. When you hit a trips or 2-pair or a combo, it's pretty easy to ship, and you always will have lots of equity to win. Okay, so your hand won't be second best too often, and the rest hands will be, which will be in the middle, will be like a limp call.